Well, I want to welcome everybody on the internet. So, hello everyone, and to Saturday Night Live, Life Recovery Ministry, and we're here to help you because life is messy, right?
Yeah.
Life is messy, and so sometimes we need some help in navigating through life. Does anybody here need any help?
Yeah.
And the deal is here is we really can't recover on our own. Okay, we have to be willing to open up, and if you stop and think about it, one of the most severe punishments that they do in prison is they isolate people because that's the most severe psychological punishment. And the trouble is, we use that same technique on ourselves oftentimes, which is isolation. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
How did that work out for you?
I'm here.
So anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about listening first. Our scripture reference will be out of Acts 8:23 through 44. And we'll be talking about that. We're dealing with step 12 tonight. I'm going to be talking about 5 skills of listening. What do you think about that? 5 skills of listening. Five, listen up! And 5 skills of listening that will make your life better, okay? And we'll be talking about that. I've got a couple different things that I have put together from Psychology Today article off the internet, and so we'll be talking about better listening. How about that?
Yes.
All right. And so I'm going to start off with some of the things I pulled out of Psychology Today on listening, and it's 3 types of reflective listening. How about that? Reflective listening. And let's see, where are we at? Oh, there it is. 3 kinds of reflective listening, and it's the low level listener. Okay, there's three levels. There's low, moderate, and proficient. And the low level listener focuses on what words mean while they're waiting to talk, right? You know how people really, they're just kind of waiting. They're hearing the words and they're hearing some of the words, but really what they're doing is waiting for their turn to get to talk, right? So they're thinking about what they're going to say. That's the lowest level of listening, okay? The second one is a moderate level of listener, and they focus on the words, okay? What does that mean? They listen to the words and they try to figure out what the other person is meaning, okay? So, and in doing so, it does make the person that's speaking feel that they're being seen and being heard. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right?
Artificially.
Excuse me?
Artificially?
No, the first one is more artificial. Okay, it's like I just I hear what you're saying. But the first one is oftentimes is used best and beneficial, like when you're talking to a waiter or waitress and they're telling you what's on the menu. That you're just hearing the words and you're trying to formulate some things, but you're not really paying attention to the person. You're just listening to the words.
Right. It's not that super important.
It's not, well, it's more about the words than it is about the person, okay? It's not about the connection. Okay. The second one is more about what those words mean and what that person is meaning by those words.
Oh.
And the third one is the proficient, being more proficient, and that is you're listening and focusing on the words and what the words mean, and also trying to be sensitive to all the clues that a person is saying, because it's more than just what the words are, and more than just what they mean, but it's about what that person is trying to communicate. And communication is 90% nonverbal. You know, how your face works, how your body gestures, your tone of your words.
That's why texting is so bad, right?
Texting is a challenge. It's texting, as I have said before, is really good for exchanging just pure information, but it has no emotional content in it except for what you imagine.
Right.
Mostly.
Good for fighting.
Right? Yeah, and you know, you don't get the meaning of a text.
Misunderstanding.
And so, but it's good for dates, times, addresses, you know, numbers. It's good for information, but it's hard for real good communication. Okay, does that make sense? But this proficient level of communication is and I'll probably talk more about it, but they talk about how kindergartner teachers talk about using your entire body, using your mind to try to figure out what you're saying, using your eyes to see all the expressions and gestures of the child that's trying to communicate, that may not have the words to communicate what they're trying to say, like all ages of people, right? and also use your body and try to feel the energy of the other person so that you can connect with them and so you can relate with them in a empathic, that's my word, not their word, but more of an empathic way. And those are the 3 different levels of listening. And I thought I'd just throw that one in there to kind of get the ball rolling tonight. What do you think so far?
Good job.
Too much? Do what? You weren't paying attention. He wasn't listening. Okay. So anyway, and so I just used that as my quotes and questions and comments as today. So anyway, anybody here interested in one of our clean bracelets? We have a white bracelet. I'm having a hard time talking. White bracelets for just today or 30 days. We have orange for a full 30 days. We have green for 60, a maroon for 90, blue for 6 months, yellow for 9 months, glow in the dark for a year, and gray for 18 months, black for 2 years, silver for 5 years, and gold for 10 years. Is there anybody that needs a bracelet? Okay, we got one back here in the back, John, and so we're glad that you're getting a bracelet. But also out there in TV land, if you would like to have a bracelet, you either contact us or hey, come to the meeting, and we'll be more than glad to hand this out. Would you hand that to him?
I don't need a bracelet, I just need you the funds first.
So, also, we just had prayer for all those that wanted prayer, and we're getting ready to start into the 12 steps. So, Willie, come on down.
And stuff on our arm, I was just rubbing.
Who wasn't the one there?
Step 1, we admit that we are powerless in our problems and that our lives have become unmanageable. We come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact natures of our wrong. We were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. We humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. We made a list of all people we have harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. We may direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. We continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying for the knowledge and His will for us and the power to carry it out. Having such a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and practice these principles in all our affairs.
Thank you, Willie.
Good job.
Thanks, Willie. How's everybody tonight?
Tommy is great, I guess.
Awesome.
How's Tommy?
All right.
Are you sure?
I'm not gonna lie. My neck hurts. Been sleeping funny on my pillow, so I don't know. Listening first. Bible reading, Acts 8:26 through 40. This is out of the New American Standard Bible. But an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, "Get ready and go south to the road that descends from Jerusalem to Gaza." This is a desert road. So he got ready and went, and there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official of Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all her treasure, and he had come to Jerusalem to worship, and he was returning and sitting in his chariot, and was reading Isaiah the prophet. Then the Spirit said to Philip, "Go up and join this chariot." Philip ran up and heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and said, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And he says, "Well, how could I unless someone guides me?" And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. Now the passage of scripture which he was reading was this: "He was led like a sheep to slaughter, and like a lamb that is silent before its shearer. So he does not open his mouth. In humiliation, his justice was taken away. Who will describe his generation from his life? For his life is taken away from the earth." The eunuch answered Philip and said, "Please tell me, of whom does the prophet say this? Of himself or of someone else?" Then Philip opened his mouth, and beginning from this scripture, he preached Jesus to him. As they went along the road, they came to some water, and the eunuch said, "Look, water, what prevents me from being baptized?" And he ordered that the chariot stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip as well as the eunuch, and he baptized him. When they come out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord snatched Philip away, and the eunuch no longer saw him, but went on his way rejoicing. But Philip found himself at Azotus, and as he passed through, he kept preaching the gospel to all the cities until he came to Caesarea. I thought I was reading that. I was like, was that the right one?
What?
The scripture,
Doug would have stopped you a long time ago.
Yeah.
you're right in the right zone.
Okay.
You just,
It says it a little different than.
yeah, well, it's because you're reading in a different translation than what was in our translation that we gave out, but
I got that one too. Want to hear that one?
that's fine. Whatever you want to do, you're the boss.
Yeah. Listening first. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. We may be so excited about what God has done for us that we want to rush right out and tell everyone our story. Or we may be very shy and hesitate to tell people, especially if we think they are better than we are. We all have a valuable story to tell. We just need to discover the best way to communicate it. God led the evangelist Philip to meet an influential traveler who had gone to Jerusalem to worship, and he was now returning. Reading aloud from the book of the prophet Isaiah, the Holy Spirit said to Philip, "Go over, walk alongside the carriage." Philip ran over and heard the man reading from the prophet Isaiah. Philip asked, "Do you understand what you're reading?" The man replied, "How can I unless someone instructs me?" So beginning with this same scripture, Philip told the good news about Jesus. The way Philip communicated is a model for us. He was sensitive to allow God to lead him to someone who was ready. He wasn't intimidated by the man's status and did not hesitate to tell him the good news about Jesus. Philip began by listening carefully. He turned into the man's need and interest, and then explained their relationship to the message he was prepared to share. Whether we are zealous or shy, following this model can help us communicate our message in a way that people can understand and receive it. That can be complicated sometimes.
No, not really. It's not complicated. I broke those things down, his process, or model as they call it, into 3 steps. One is to be sensitive and let God lead us. That's number 1, right? That's what Philip was doing, and when God said go, he went, and that went to that gives us number 2 is he listened to the man. And oftentimes, remember we're talking about listening tonight. This is our thing about listening, and so he listened to the man. He was reading, and so he listened to him, and he listened carefully. And when we do that, then we're able to respond to what they're interested in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And number 3 is he tuned in. He tuned in to him, and he asked him what, did he know? And he said, no. How can I know if somebody could that? I'm going to say connect the dots, okay? And so he took what the man what he already knew, and the scriptures, and the Old Testament, and the gospel of Jesus Christ, and he connected it all together for him. And that's because he was interested and he wanted to know. How's that?
It's good. I was thinking back when I didn't listen well unless it benefited me because I did whatever I wanted to. But that's different these days, so it doesn't even make sense now that I think about it. So what is my attitude about sharing my story in recovery? Am I reluctant to tell my story, or am I the type that wants to share too much too soon with too many people? And I was thinking, I keep to myself throughout the week. I'm not really plugged into a large recovery community outside of here tonight. Even though I could go to different meetings throughout the week, I don't. I try to help people when I can. I watch what I say and do around people. Recovery is a personal thing to me. I don't mind sharing here what I learned, and if I was asked to share other places, I would consider it. As I grow older, I'm finding I like to be reserved and live simple, and have my sobriety and new life in Christ shown by my actions in life through how I carry out my daily tasks. And I know I don't always act and do things correctly. I do know that God knows me for who I am and where I came from, and He knows my future, and I trust God in the process, even when I don't trust myself or other humans.
Good.
I had to kind of do this on the fly since Zach wasn't feeling well, but it was okay. It worked out. From either extreme, am I willing to wait for God's timing for sharing recovery? Even then, I tend to question the need to share my recovery, thinking, is this some type of peer pressure or me seeking attention with wrong motives? And I have to remind myself that there are so many people out there in that world suffering, not seeing a way out, and God can use me to speak light into their darkness, showing them there is a way out.
And see, the first part of that question, number 2, which you just read,
Yeah.
was from either extreme. What are the extremes? I'm so shy, I don't want to say anything, or I just want to overwhelm people with my personal information. And both of those are extreme.
Yeah.
And
I just want to be somewhere in the middle.
that middle is good.
Yeah.
That's called what we
Unless-
call balanced.
Unless I have to go to one extreme or the other.
And the reality is, generally, we are in one extreme or the other, and so we have to kind of push ourselves a little bit to begin to create that balance. Because we're either this way or this way, and we have to make some adjustments to try to balance out.
Well, it's like I was been asked to go visit some other places, and I had to think, well, no, because I don't know how I would feel when I get there within the environment, you know?
Well, you won't know until you try either, so.
Well, I don't want to mess up my mental health, so I decline
Well,
politely.
there's a place, and Chris is right, there's a place that we have to be willing to test ourselves, but at the same time, we don't want to risk ourselves.
Yeah.
But see, in our days gone by, let's use that terminology, we took a lot of risks, okay?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so, I mean, risk was that was part of the high, was taking risk, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to try to turn those things and try to balance it out. But at the same time, we have to take healthy risks to be able to continue to grow and develop.
Makes sense.
Did you hear that?
Excuse me?
I said you didn't hear that, you didn't.
I heard you say something, but I didn't know what it was.
That guy's so good with words. He's a good explainer. Tommy will be there Sunday.
Tommy's pretty good. He's coming along.
Hey,
You should have seen him when he started.
Oh, do you have video of that?
Actually, we may have in the archives.
we're talking 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
When Michael was filming it, Newberry?
Wow.
Yeah.
That long ago?
Yeah, Michael Newberry used to film it. Gosh, that was almost 15 years ago when Michael did that. I talked to him the other day.
I would not.
I haven't seen Mike in a long time.
He's in Arkansas. He was in California. He's been all over. Do I see my story as valuable to God's plan? Describe how. Yes, because it shows how God works in my life to show me a new way and how God healed and forgave me of my past.
And other people.
Yeah. Any more questions for me, Doug?
Tommy, I don't.
Oh, darn.
You did good. I could probably come up with some if you want me.
Okay, one, just one.
One.
Come on, just one.
Well, you talked about, question number 3, it's, do you see your story as valuable? And so, in what way do you see your story valuable?
Yeah, that's right.
Coming from where I come from, there's a lot of us that were taught that this is the only way that you live and this is how you do it. And
Now, there's people that don't understand what you just said.
Yeah, that's different from what you said just now.
what? Well, coming from where I grew up at and the way we were taught to live, we weren't taught to even go to church and learn about God or any of that. We were taught to live a dark life.
that's the reason why I said people wouldn't understand the hidden message.
We were taught to be a certain way and do a certain thing, and that's what we did. And a lot of them, like I have people I know that I talk to that I've known forever, and they think that what I'm doing is a joke. They think it's a joke, God's a joke.
Right.
You know, what you're doing is a joke. The 12 steps are a joke.
Nowadays, they just don't hide it, see?
No. But well, then why, my thing is, why are they still calling? If what I'm doing, if I'm a joke, then why are they still calling me?
Right,
Saying, hello, hey, what's up, man, how you doing today?
yes.
Right, that's them, their problem.
And I have to ask myself, are they trying to get me to go back to that life, or are they
No,
seeing a
no.
change in?
They're confused themselves.
Yeah. No,
They
I-
don't know to believe or not.
Are you saying that's part of your value?
yeah,
God,
because
your story, God's, your value to God is that, can I put words in your mouth?
Well, I think your value to God is the other people hearing your story too.
Yes.
yes,
And that they feel something. And I remember when I was going to college and I was working with some guys that just, I mean, I wasn't working, I was going to school with them from, they just got back from Vietnam. They were in the same class, and I had this one guy told me, he said, I don't know about those other guys in the class, but I think you're real, and we're watching you to see if you are.
Yeah.
And we hope you are. And because they felt something, they needed something, and they weren't ready to take the step, but they were still willing to observe.
makes sense.
That's a lot of the people are observing you every day everywhere you go.
Oh, I know.
And, your actions speak a lot louder than your words do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can say something out of one side of your mouth and then do something totally opposite on the other side, and what are people gonna look at? They're gonna look at what you do instead of what you say.
But when your words are true and they see that they're true, those help too.
Oh, yeah, because everybody's testing us all the time just to see if you're gonna be consistent in what you're saying.
Right.
If you're acting out what you believe.
Yeah.
Because actually, we always act out what we believe. And so they're trying to see your actions to really know for sure what it is you believe.
And what you're saying is true.
Okay, I'll start behaving more better. I did it more better.
More better, I heard you. That was a Jim Butler terminology there. Yeah.
More better.
I heard it. Where we had some personnel problems. In fact, I meant to pray for Zach earlier. Zach's not feeling well. In fact, he thought last night he might have to go to the hospital. So no, he had a COVID test and it was negative. So, but it sounds pretty rough, whatever it is. And so anyway, Tommy stepped in and filled in for Zach. Did Tommy do as good a job as Zach?
Good job.
I was gonna do it where I just read the questions and then answered them without, like right there on the spot.
How do you do that?
That's how my reflection was gonna go,
Okay.
but I went to step, I just answered the questions.
Well, you did good. I appreciate it. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you for jumping in there. So, you know, Tommy has come a long ways. And by the way, step work is very important. It has helped you to transform your life, right, Tommy?
Yeah.
I mean, you can play with it, and you can act like you're going through it, but if you really go ahead and you let it work in you and affect you, it will change you.
Right. Keep interested in it.
You
Yeah,
wanna know something I noticed about working step 12?
I'm listening.
It was like when I've been out and doing stuff in my community where I live, and I noticed that I'm seeing more of what's going on around me.
Good?
Let's.
Does that make
step
sense?
12. Let's remind everybody what step 12 is.
Well, they just read it just a moment ago.
But I'm not looking inward at all my crap
Yeah.
inside, that I'm actually seeing the world around me.
Jacob forgot.
Hang on a second,
Step 12,
we gotta wait.
Cause step 12 says, you know, to carry this message, you know.
Carry a message. Step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice, did they say practice? Practice these principles in all of our affairs.
I got a little confused like the first week, cause it's like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, standing at the gas station line going, hey man, let me tell you about step 4, you know?
No,
Hey,
again,
man, do you know that you're in denial, like, you know, I
okay, and that's the reason why you went through the process, the model that they talked about Philip, and that's the reason why I numbered them and went through them a while ago. And the first one is to be sensitive,
yeah.
okay? And sensitive to what's around you, just what you just said, and be aware of what's going on. And then step 2 was then listen to the individual, what's happening to their life. And the way that he listened, and I think is a very good way of listening, was he heard him read, but then he asked him a question.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to say, tell somebody something, you ask a question. You ask a question, you know. Do you understand what you're reading? You know, and that works in that application of what Philip was doing. And then the third part was then he tuned into the man and then picked up right where he was at and worked on connecting. I'm using my terminology. He's tried to connect all the dots. That's what I try to do every Saturday night, is I try to connect the dots for you to help you to see how it all works together.
We're glad you can do that.
Okay, well, I try, that's my desire, that's my purpose, I believe. And so, and that's what this is all about. But it's not about going around and forcing your information. There's a lot of people that do that because they're wanting to do a good thing, but the fact of it is, that usually pushes people away.
Way, yeah.
Just turns me off.
Yeah, and because that's a force tactic, but a love tactic is interested in the individual, not
I was gonna say, I just wanna be people's friends, be your friend.
We don't your friends, man.
love.
Thank you.
Love makes a
There
difference.
goes.
That connection.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's step 12 and some of our information. Again, it's about listening. What I'm going to share here is out of Psychology Today. Got it off the internet, and the questions that in my question part earlier, where I talked about the 3 different levels, was also out of Psychology Today, but it was a different topic, but it was related information. This is the 5 skills of listening, okay? And that will make you have a better life. Everybody wants a better life, right?
Yes.
And listening helps you to have a better life, okay? Because what listening does is really an active way of actually demonstrating your concern or love to others. Care, right. Kindness. And so one of the main survival needs, according to Abraham Maslow, is that everybody wants to feel a place that they're loved and they're able to feel like they belong, okay? And listening, if you listen to somebody, if they feel like they've been seen and be heard, not just what they're saying, but what they mean.
Understood.
Yeah, and oftentimes when people ask me questions, I ask them, well, tell me exactly what you mean. Because sometimes our first statement we're not even sure what it is yet, but we know we want something, and we say it, and then if I can get you to say it again, usually it comes out a little bit different and a little more clear because it's clearer to you. And it's hard for me to even get close to answering a question if you're not even sure what it is that you want to know. Does that make sense? And I'm not trying to be negative here, but I'm trying to be effective. Does that make sense? All right? Yes? How about that?
Yes.
So, 5 levels. 5 levels of listening, okay? And these, even though I call them, not 5 levels, but 5 skills, even though they're calling them skills, I'm calling them tools. Tools of listening, okay? And I'm going to go through the overall points, okay, of what the 5 things are. All right, the key points. A good conversation depends as much on listening as it does speaking. That's so important. A good conversation depends a lot on listening as it does speaking, because if you just have a person speaking, then that's not even a conversation. That's just somebody talking. What we do here in a group is I try to have interaction, and when you talk and I talk and we converse, we have a conversation that helps all of us learn better and more. Okay, and I try to make it. One of the skills is being safe, and I try to make it as safe as possible or as comfortable as possible so that you're able to communicate. Okay, listening well is an art comprised of 5 skills. Now, we talk about skills, we're looking at it as kind of a technical thing, but I like the terminology as an art. It's something that you're kind of emotionally involved in. You feel your way through a conversation if you're really trying to be connected. Does that make sense? All right. The points are creating safety, point number 1, or skill number 1. Having validity and making it brief, that you're validating somebody, but you're doing it in a brief way, in just a few words. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Concisely. Deploying curiosity. And so you're using your ability to be curious. And that is really a very interesting part of us, being curious about something. Why things are the way they are. And you're seeking to learn, you're seeking to discover, and that's that curiosity. Putting your whole self into it. In other words, you're really being interested. You're trying to look into the situation, you're trying to talk to the person, you're trying to not only understand the words like we talked about a while ago, but you're also wanting to try to understand what that person is feeling and what that person is meaning and what that person really needs. Does that make sense? Okay. I think we're on the 5th skill. Put your whole self in it. The 5th skill is understanding what the words don't say. In other words, some people, oftentimes, I don't know how many times this happened here at Saturday night, people say one thing, but that's not really what they mean. And you listen to what they're saying, but really the question is what they're not saying. Because some people have a hard time being able to communicate whatever it is, and they kind of talk around it. You understand what I'm talking about? Does that make sense?
I'm good at it.
You're good at it? Okay, all right. Let's see. And one of the main things that we have to do that they brought up here on the points is that we have to eliminate our own personal distractions which oftentimes are our own screens or our own phones. Because oftentimes we want to try to communicate with somebody, but we also have this other distraction. And our brain is not made for multitasking. Now it can go back and forth real quick, but if you're having to focus on something else, you're not able to focus on what that person is saying, or what they're feeling, or what they're meaning. And so what we have to do is we have to be willing to be all in if we really want to have good communication. Or have good listening skills. They made a comment here that a happy, satisfied, and nourished feeling is like having a good meal, and a conversation is that way. That you come away being emotionally or intellectually filled, and you feel like you've gotten something, you've been nurtured, and not only through just information, but when we connect that way, we're actually really giving life energy back and forth. I remember listening to a psychologist, and I can't remember his name, was Meyer. What was his first name? I can't remember but he was in charge of for many years, the Christian psychological organization. And he said that if he could, he said, what I'm getting ready to tell you can put all myself and my colleagues out of business. If Christians would just listen to each other and be with each other, there's something that's transmitted from heart to heart that actually heals and restores, and that's love, and that's what he's talking about, and that's what we're talking about here in listening. Okay, we're having some technical skills or tools to help us to maybe use our love in a more beneficial or productive way. And let's see. Let's go on down here. All right. Let me give the skills. The first skill is great listeners create safety. A person that feels unsafe is not going to communicate things that may make them appear vulnerable or weak or less than or whatever, or needy or hurting. If they don't feel safe, they're not going to open up. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right? I remember Dr. James Dobson talking about that a person's spirit is like a clam or an oyster, and that they have that oyster or mussel has to open up to feed. But if you stick that thing with a stick, like you're attacking it, it closes down. And he likens that to our spirit, that if we keep getting jabbed or stuck or threatened or hurt or attacked, we close down. And if we continue to do that, eventually we'll stay closed down. And if we stay closed down long enough, we start dying. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
I won't go any deeper into that. How about that? Okay, so what we need to do is, the idea here is we have to create, a good listener creates safety. And see, oftentimes when people talk to me, they have layers of communication, and they see how receptive I am on different layers. And as if I'm receptive and I don't look shocked, or I don't look judgmental, or if I don't cut them off, they kind of test me out as we all do, whether you realize it or not, and they eventually will, if they feel safe, they'll eventually will come down to the things that are deep, personal, private hurts that they have covered up and guarded because of issues in their life. Does that make sense? So the first thing of listening is that we have to create safety. Does that make sense, right? That's the first skill. And so this safety, they have to have a safe heart. They have to have freedom to take risks, to open up, because sometimes there's been people that have told me things that they had never told another living person. You know what I mean? And so we can't. You have to be careful. You don't want to damage people. You don't want to harm them. Okay. Does that make sense? So you don't judge them, you love them. Just as we say here Saturday night, we accept everybody, okay? We accept everyone. You can come in here drunk or high, or you can even act out. As long as you don't affect anybody else, you're welcome here. We love you. We may not love your stuff, because you don't even love your stuff, right? So, but we want to help you with your stuff, okay? So, all right, number 2 skill. Anybody have any questions on that before I go on? Number 2 skill. Great listeners validate in a few simple words. This is really, really important. I like this right here. And that is when people are talking to you, they're watching to see how you are, how you're reacting, if you're accepting, or if you're shocked, okay, or if you're overwhelmed, or if you're angry, or you're judging them. They're looking, and what you do is you validate people, and they give some examples like as a response of course, you know, that makes sense, for sure. I get that. You know, 2 or 3 words to let them know that you're listening, and also to validate them that they can continue, it's safe, and they can continue on sharing. Because we all know in here, at least most of us I think, is that when you're finally able to say something in a safe place, maybe for the first time, something happens on the inside of you. Healing is able to start to take place, because when you let something out that you had locked down for a long time, then that makes space for that healing to come in. Because the healing can't come in when you got it all full of all that other stuff, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so when we start to let it out, then some healing can come in. If we let it. If we're willing. And I know it's kind of hard, and sometimes it's kind of scary. But that's what listeners are about here. And I thought this was a good topic that Zach picked about listening. And so here I am. Okay? All right. So just a few words to validate what was going on. And so it works. The validation works with creating a safe space, which is skill number 1, right? Skill number 1 is still working together. Number 3. Any questions before I go with 3? Comment? No? Okay, number 3. Great listeners follow their natural curiosity. All right? What does that mean? Well, when you're listening, and this is really the kind of fun part of dealing with people, because you don't know. You look at people and you don't know what's going on in their life. You're interested, and it's a learning opportunity. It's a time for you to grow just by listening. I remember many years ago I had a meeting with a group of people, and they were some leaders in the church, and they brought their mates, and this one lady brought her husband, which I'd never met, and he had never come to church, but we were in this meeting, and he was a cattleman. And so I'd never really talked with anybody in the cattle business, and so I just asked him some questions, and I was just curious, okay?
Genuinely
I was interested, and so I just tried to talk with him because I wanted him to feel comfortable, I wanted him to feel accepted, and I was interested, and I talked with him. She told me a week later, she just said, thank you for talking with my husband. I don't know that you were even interested in cattle or not, but it really helped him because you were interested. And I said, well, I'm curious. I like to know stuff. And it was an opportunity, and I wanted to make him feel safe and comfortable instead of awkward. And so, and I just remember that, and it really meant a lot to me that she affirmed me in what I did. And so I thought I'd throw that story in here right now. Hopefully that was beneficial. So, and see, because when you use your curiosity and you're talking with people and this thought just popped in my head. It's not in the information, but so I want to throw this in here. Sometimes in talking with people, your curiosity may be piqued on issues or problems or trauma with people. Now, we have to be very careful that you don't intrude into people's life in some of those areas. If they want to talk about them, that's up to them. Okay, but we don't probe or dig around. One terminology that used to be used in the counseling circles. We don't try to dig around and dig up stuff, but we have to be careful. I did hear one counselor lady talk about one of the things that a lot of counselors do, that they do get fixated on people's issues. And they call it, trauma porn, okay? And that's an issue with the counselor, okay? In other words, trying to dig around in that because, yes, they may be interested, but it's inappropriate to dig around people and trying to force them to open up. I am totally against that, and I think that's very harmful. And if that's harmful, that goes against do no harm, right? Does that make sense? So, but if people want to do that when they feel safe enough to open up and do that, and in fact, I tell people all the time, you don't have to tell me anything. You don't have to. Whenever you're ready,
That makes them sometimes want to open up.
And well, I want them to feel safe, but I want them to know that it's not by any pressure from me. Okay, so, and I know I kind of deviated from listening here a little bit, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. And they use this terminology that a good listener uses their spidey senses, which is basically your curiosity, interested in helping people. Oftentimes people say things or they have a gesture, and sometimes I do this. I ask for clarification. Well, can you tell me what that means? Can you help me understand? Can you expound on that? You don't have to if you don't want to, but and it's not just because of me. It's because I'm thinking that it might enhance our communication and be beneficial to that person. So anyway, that's some number 3 as far as listening. A good listener follows their natural curiosity, and if you're curious, see, that's a real important learning tool. Being curious, that lets that person know that you are listening, and that you're involved with them. You're trying to see them and know them, which is actually a loving gesture. Unless you're doing this to hurt or harm them, okay? I might as well throw that in there too, because you could do it to, there are predators out there, so, it's just, okay. Do what?
That's why we're all here.
Okay.
That's why we're all.
Okay, so one of the things in listening and asking those questions, the scripture that we read there about Philip, he asked the question, and the set of questions as far as like they use in writing or as a journalist, you ask questions, what, when, where, why, how, you ask those questions. And sometimes people, when they're talking about their own stuff, they don't even have full clarity because all this stuff's whipping around in their head.
You're just trying to get it out.
And they need to organize it so they can get it out. And that's the reason why talking to somebody is so important, or journaling, writing things down, because then you're organizing and you can have a brain dump. You dump that stuff out, and when you just do that and you get it down on paper, sometimes you see things, or when you're talking, you hear things that you didn't even realize it was in there. I've had that happen to myself. So, comments, questions? Okay so far?
Good job.
Interesting?
Very.
All right. Number 4 skill. Great listeners listen with their entire body. I mentioned this just a little bit earlier when I was talking about in the opening, but kindergarten teachers have imparted this thing called whole body listening. That's what they call it. And they say they use their eyes to watch for nonverbal. Again, 90% of all communication is nonverbal. A friend of mine that just passed away not too long ago, he studied how to detect people when they're telling lies, and most of it's nonverbal and speech pattern and voice inflection. Okay, all right. Well, I don't know. It's Stuart Roush. I don't know if some of you know Stuart, and he was a good guy. In fact, he was recognized worldwide on the things that he had learned and studied, and he was teaching organizations, police force, other agencies on how to detect these things. And he could literally even read stories that testimonies of people, and he would tell them whether the person was telling the truth or lying, but by just their transcript of what they've said.
Imagine the people that are taught to counteract that. Those are dangerous people, aren't they?
Sure. And the thing of it is, you can do a lot of that by what you're saying, training yourself to be a good liar. But the fact of it is, your brain and your body knows.
Responds a certain way.
Yeah, and it oftentimes it will leave a trail or tales to what the truth really is. But you have to be aware, and you have to be observant. And again, that's part of some listening skills. And of course, they work on them a lot. Of course, we're not talking about that intense here, but it's still there. So, but here in this whole body listening, you watch for the nonverbals, you use your brain to what people are thinking, and you use your heart to what they're feeling, so you're able to relate and connect, okay? and then I know I talk to people and they try to communicate, and I said, well, help me understand what you're feeling. Describe that to me. You say it in a different way, and so that I can try to grasp what it is that's going on, and try to learn and to better connect. So anyway, so then you use your heart to feel. You keep this is an interesting statement, and keep your body quiet so that you're respectful. In other words, oftentimes, a lot of people, it's more about them than it is about the person you're listening to. And you're either moving around, acting out, or looking at your phone, or things like that. And we all do some of that stuff, okay? But the more that you can be, the more or less of a distraction you can be to the person you're listening to, the more that they're able to feel safe and be able to communicate what it is that they're trying to get out. And again, it may be things that they're not even fully clear with, but they have that inside of them. You follow me? Hopefully that makes some
Looks
sense.
like you don't have that.
What's that?
The problem with us, thinking we're not listening.
Those are the ones that ain't listening.
Oh, you guys just get up and leave the room, mate. It's not-
No, we can
We
hear
were
you out
listening
there.
outside.
We was actually.
I know. In fact, that was my thought. Some of you guys thinking, well, they're just getting up and leaving. And I thought, well, they're gonna go upside and they're
We were
gonna hear
listening to
outside.
you very much.
Here was our question,
Okay,
was he said something, and it was funny, and you laughed down here, out there, we hear you.
I said,
So you can hear what we're saying now? But that's exactly what I was getting ready to say when she said it.
Can you hear something?
Wouldn't you like to know?
I wouldn't doubt it.
so we just, these skills or tools that I'm talking about here can be used in a negative way, in a hurtful way, but I just don't use this to manipulate people or to try to have power over them. This is really, of course, you can use any tool or skill in a positive way, or you can use it in a negative way. But I'm just saying, it is in your best interest to only use these tools in a positive way, because if you use it in a way to manipulate or to try to have power over somebody else, it poisons your own soul.
And can backfire.
Yeah, you're gonna reap what you sow, according to the scriptures. Okay, and some people think, well, I'll get away with it. Well, we never get away with anything. Haven't you found that out yet?
Right.
God's always watching.
That's not a threat. That's just the way that it is. It's the law of the universe. It is what it is.
I had a situation earlier,
Yeah.
stopped at a store, I go in there and I looked at something. I had it in my hand, I set it back on the counter, there were several of them, and I had to check my account on my phone, because the cards, and I go out there, and there was like 10 people in there, and I thought, well, I'm gonna be late getting here. I was like, no, you better go in there and buy it, so next time you come in here, you don't think you stole one. And that goes with what you were just saying.
Yes. Yes. All right. So let's see. Yeah. Let's go on to number 5. Great listeners hear what is underneath the words. Now I know this may be a little technical. In fact, they say here this is really for ninja level listening. Ninja level listening, and that if that, huh?
Ninjas, angel ninjas.
Ninjas, huh? I haven't heard about angels that are ninjas, but I guess they could be.
Hey, Tommy's
Time. Yeah, so what, listening to what's not being said. You know, oftentimes, as I already said, people will talk around things, and they may not even know what it is that they're wanting to know. And if you've been in Saturday night and people ask questions, you've heard people do that, and because there's a lot of reasons why, but it happens. But this listening skill is listening, trying to hear what is what's not being said, what's underneath the words. You know, what's really in their heart, what is it that they're looking for? And oftentimes, to be able to do that, you have to just let people talk.
All meaning one.
So you have ninja level listening skills, don't you?
I don't know, I've never been tested.
I tested you, I've seen you.
It's called reading body language.
And so what we need to do is, you know, look for, you know, how you know, oftentimes people are communicating, and if they come to a tough spot, they may look off or move or gesture or whatever, and you know that they come up to a place that's troublesome, and it's kind of like a bump in the road that they went around it, and so you know there's something there, and you make that mental note, and in doing that, after listening to someone long enough, if you're careful and you're listening, you can put that together and get an idea of what it is that they're avoiding. How about that? Or not able to say, or that's really troubling them. Does that make sense? Excuse me?
Nothing personal.
Okay.
Any personal.
Bump in the road.
Bump in the road, yeah, bump in the road. And so what we have to do is we have to be curious, and we have to listen with our whole body, and we have to reframe, and we have to confirm, and we have to encourage people, and whatever we do, we try not to judge them. We try to make a safe space for them. You've heard this terminology about holding space for other people, and what that means, at least to me, is you give people an opportunity to let some of their stuff out in a safe way, and you're not pushing them, and you're not trying to drag it out of them, but you're giving them, you're holding a space or a time or a moment, and we try to do some of that around here. We do not want people to talk when other people are talking. You know, if you remember a few weeks ago, the fellow that was over here, and he was wanting to talk while everybody else was talking, and I said, "Sir, you can't interrupt, but we'll give you an opportunity to talk." But he didn't want to talk when his opportunity to talk was there, and he only wanted to talk when other people were talking. At least that's what it seemed like to me. Yes, and so.
I used to do that.
Yes, and so and I understand some of that. Because it was safer for him to talk when other people are talking, and because it was safer that way, because I couldn't hear, I didn't know what was going on, and but it was wanting to come out evidently for whatever reasons, and there could have been multiple ones. And I'm not trying to be harsh at that fellow. I'm just saying I understand, and so I tried to be as kind as possible and say, "Sir, you can't talk when this lady over here is talking, you can't be talking at the same time. We'll give you a chance to talk. So, anyway, but that was maybe not what he wanted, or maybe that was not as,
John was here,
do what?
John here?
That was not maybe safe for him to,
I think you helped him understand how to take care of something if it happens at his meeting.
well, could
Because
be.
I've seen it happen down there.
Well, we've had multiple things happen here, and we try to do it as kindly as possible, but we have to, and soon as one disorderly thing happens, it can cause a ripple of disorder. And so you just do your best to try to juggle. And I have deviated from the topic again, so maybe it was helpful.
You're not listening to yourself.
Get with the program, dude.
Yes.
Yeah, get with the program.
Lord, forgive me. And you too. All right.
Oh, me also.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, what are you gonna say?
I'm saying it wrong, I already know.
That's all right. I'll give you 3
They're getting off the
chances.
subject. You're talking about, they're getting off the subject.
Oh, they're getting off subject.
Oh, I see.
That's-
And sucks this thing, I'm agreeing with him.
Huh? So the main thing of it is here with people here, and is to try to tune in to them the best you can by visually, by intellectually, or by thoughts, by your heart, by your emotions, by all those body cues, and by watching the energy or feeling the energy of the individual. And that way you can kind of navigate in this conversation, and with your curiosity be able to have a good, healthy, nurturing conversation that's beneficial to you and to that individual.
Right?
That's hard, yeah. So, any questions or comments? So you guys only want to comment when we're not in the comment area, right?
Well, then you're talking.
Only when I'm talking.
Yeah. We want to make you feel interested, that we're interested.
That's the way we're doing this tonight.
Yeah, you're dealing with a bunch of,
I was very interested, just so you know.
Oh,
I was listening.
thank you very much, I appreciate
When I
that.
told him to be quiet, I was paying attention.
Well, a part of what Saturday night is about is to help people to, life is very chaotic and disordered.
and getting only more.
And the trouble is, we get caught up in the messiness of life, and we are dysregulated ourselves. And what God wants to give us is to help us to connect with His love and His peace and His grace, so that we can drop out of that chaos and come into that peace and have more internal order or peace. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And less chaotic, more emotionally ordered, but see, it's real easy to get spun up in the tornado of emotional drama that life is. And when people come in here, sometimes there are a lot of those characteristics in people, because we're all people, right? And so what we have to do is respectfully try to help bring and have peace and order to help to bring that internal regulation of their own emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's, hopefully I said that correctly, because it's pretty complex, and it's hard, and a lot of people are not very tolerant in trying to facilitate that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so, anyway, that's some of what we want to do here, and hopefully it's helped you people. That was not good terminology. Hopefully it helped you folks out. I heard it. I'm sorry. You folks that are watching by the internet, that resonated with you, except for the "you people" statement, that resonated with you, and that we're able to give you an idea. And I just want you to know, as with everybody in the room, that you're welcome here at Saturday Night Live, and we'll do our best to love you and accept you and help you to come into recovery. And recovery is not just being sober or having sobriety, but it's about being transformed inside and having peace and freedom from all the screaming demons that you've been trying to hold down and suppress in your life, which just drains the life out of you, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so we just want to love you and help you. So concluding question. Any comments for?
Listen first.
Listen. Shut your own mouth and open up your 2 ears, right? That's
We
right.
have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
2 ears, 1 mouth.
There's the first time I
Open your eyes, open your heart, okay?
I'm always listening. Never
So-
like 6 in or not.
So, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. Amen. And yes, of course, make healthy choices. Now, next week is our